Hi everyone, welcome you back. Last week I had a lecture on the overview of the field of second language writing, mainly by synthesizing the 3 required readings. Right? This week I will definitely change the format a little bit. I want to have a seminar today. So that is to say, I want you to discuss with me all together about the 3 readings. Okay, so you definitely are free to talk whatever you like, and I will give you some, prompt questions. We will go from there. Okay, the 3 readings include Coming 2003, Silva and his colleagues 2003, and also Chueca 2011. Okay, now let's take a look at the first one, addressing the teachers' perspectives, how they conceptualize second language writing. Okay, this is a very fun article, don't you think so? What do you think of the article, by the way? Did you enjoy it?
I was trying, as I read it, trying to see myself in all of that. And that kind of I don't know if mistakes is the right word, but kind of what stood out to me is, okay, do the teachers actually, when they get into the classroom, take what they've learned and apply it, or do they kind of stick to what they've done?
Yeah.
And I didn't do very good. In reflection.
So you tried to reflect on your previous experience.
Yeah, my previous teaching experience. And to see, okay, have I done enough maybe to apply? Or was it, or do you get caught in a rut almost of teaching the same?
I see. So that is to say you want to be more theory informed, right? And also, you want to articulate the rationale for doing a certain task, right? I think this is really a good survey, right? So we will discuss that. Now, to get started, once again, I will introduce the author. Okay, so take a look at this, webpage here. Dr. Alistair Coming is also a renowned scholar in our field. He actually worked with a lot of, scholars. He had a lot of collaborative work, throughout the world. And right now, I believe his main research areas are assessment of writing, okay? And of course, teaching pedagogy, second language, evaluation, second language, acquisition program evaluation, more, geared toward second language education, okay? So, you can take a look at his experience here. I would say he is really active member in our community. So every time I attended the symposium on second language writing, I met him. Sometimes he gave the plenary speech, and he was really so active during the past years. And right now, still, he's really a big name in the field. Okay, so something, the area focused on the assessment of writing, or the, second language education, evaluation, program evaluation, something like that. Okay, if you like, you can take a look at all these, references here, and also, his CV. Okay, now, first of all, let's just discuss the general picture of this study. Okay, what is the purpose of the study? What are the samples and participants? And what is the research approach? And how were data connected? So we have different sources of data, and there is a primary data source, right? What is that? So I would like you to take a look at and review the book chapter again, and discuss with your partner if you like, and then we will go from there.
I think the purpose of the study was to study the curriculum in different countries or in different language situations.
Yeah.
So we went to 6 different countries. He picked 3 countries that English was the first language.
Yes.
And 3 countries that English was the second language.
Or in a foreign language.
Yeah,
right?
the foreign language. Yeah. And then his research approach was qualitative, so he started collecting the data by interviewing.
That's right.
Yeah, asking the students.
So the main instrument is the interview, right? Individual interview.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any of the data, by the way? apart from interviews, right?
Yeah.
I think he mentioned
Also
some other
interesting,
interview data.
You recorded,
Yeah, recorded interview, yeah.
recorded.
Any other data? He also collected some artifacts, right?
yeah.
Right? So, for example, he mentioned that the outline, the course, instructional materials,
Exactly,
right?
and he analyzed the students' papers, I think. Was this one or
That is actually the supplementary material. He actually mainly focused on the interview, right? Personal interviews. Don't you think so? Yeah. So, what else? Very good, Reza. Any other thought? What is the purpose of this study? What motivated him to do this?
Basically to help ESL, EFL instructors keep writing better.
Oh, yeah. Especially, I remember he mentioned that this would be helpful for those novice teachers, right? That's good. You want to
And
see.
to see the influence of diversity in those teaching areas, I thought so. Maybe.
Yeah, even like the second language teaching pedagogy in even different contexts, right?
We're talking
Okay.
about the Cummings paper.
Cummings paper, that's right.
He was trying to see, he looked at classes and interviewed professors and looked at the syllabus to see what the consistencies were
Yeah,
and how that translated into actual classroom.
that's right. So for his viewpoint, this is quite new. He tries to fill the gap because he wanted to hear the perspectives by the actual practitioners, right? Not like the researchers, right? Researchers may observe the classroom and discuss the pedagogy or curriculum-informed, whatever, say, pedagogy, right? But for this study, he experienced English as a second language, scholars and as well as instructors, right? And from their perspectives, what this specific, pedagogy might be, looking at, right? Something like that. Good. So, if you take a look at this article, you can see a lot of texts that address the purpose of this study, right? The gap, for example, like on page 72, he mentioned that there is a gap, there is the lack of systematic information about ESL or EFL writing instruction as viewed by its practitioners, right? So, in the second paragraph, as you can say, I undertook a study to document in detail how highly experienced instructors of ESL and EFL writers in 6 different countries conceptualize their teaching. Okay? By the way, this is something to do with teacher belief as well, right? If you are familiar with, second language teacher education, teacher belief is a huge topic, so you can take a look at, a lot of research studies have already been conducted in this area, their belief about the conceptualization of the right instruction. Okay, good. By the way,
Was he also, I think he was talking about how the student populations for EFL and ESL, this particular context differ, and
Yeah.
that's also part of the reason why he undertook.
exactly. Good. That's right. So the different, student populations would be really would definitely come here, right? So it is the, participants from different countries, right? Very good. And research approach, once again, as Reza mentioned just now, it is a qualitative study, right? The main instrument is personal instrument, interviews, right? And we'll see the questions there, right? So did you notice that there are 3 questions for all the interviewees to answer, right? 3 questions. These questions will help the researcher understand their perceptions and about their conceptualizations of the, writing instruction, right? Okay, these research questions, these interview questions are really helpful, right? If we do the semi-structured interviews, you definitely want a certain protocol, right? So we call it interview protocol. And then you have some guiding questions, you have some prompts, so that all the participants can actually voice their ideas relevantly, right? And meanwhile, we welcome them to kind of like, go beyond a little bit the, topics or these issues in, investigation, and you can, be happy to find out some even extra outcome, so we call it that is a follow-up question sometimes, if they address even, new things that you never thought of. That is wonderful, right? You can continue ask the follow-up questions so that you get more perspectives. Okay, once again, that is a semi-structured, say, interview. Here, that is individual interview rather than the focus group, right? So if you are familiar with, there are several different types of interviews, right? You can do personal, individual interviews. You can also do the focus group, right? Focus group actually can have all these different perspectives come together and discuss, a series of questions together. There are some cons, and pros, right? Of course. And for this one, individual one. So I tend to use individual interviews a lot. So for me, I just feel like it's better for me to understand this individual person's perspectives and the perceptions. Sometimes, in a focus group, maybe somebody's voice is not so higher than others. If somebody is louder, somebody may dominate the talk a little bit, right? So, but the good thing is that you have them together, and of course, the perspectives are broadened, right? So some, say questions can be even delved into at the deeper level, right? Or even, extended at the extended level, right? So it totally depends on you, and you try that as a researcher, and you definitely want to try the interviews as your research instrument. Okay, the data. Apart from interviews, also you can collect some artifacts, as I said just now, right? For example, you are talking about your ways of teaching. Then how can this be supported by the syllabus, right? Then you can, of course, collect their syllabus. You can collect the instrumental, materials, right? Okay, and also remember, Carmen also mentioned that he used the observation notes as well, right? On page 74, you notice that he mentioned that I took detailed notes during the interviews. So you can, say, note down whatever you feel necessary, not only the keywords from the students, talk, but also, even the facial expressions. Maybe, the participants say something, but they may imply something, you can definitely write down some, say, your observations about this, interview. Okay, whatever important things you may catch, you can definitely note down. Okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, let us take a look at the results. This is exactly what we want to discuss further. I like this article because it is very clear, right? The three different perspectives are revealed here. First one. How about the teacher's options for curriculum organization? How are all these language classes, especially the writing classes, are organized, right? Or also the second pair of the perspective, the implications for the achievement and assessment. So how the students' writing can be assessed, right? That is to say, the first one, say focuses on the writing, say instruction, and the second one focuses on the assessment, right? Now, how about the third one? Since this is a diverse population, right? So different contexts. Are there a lot of similarities, or are there any, say, differences, right? So these are the third, say, theme that can emerge from this interview. Okay, let us talk about the first one first. Concepts defining curriculum. What are the findings about this, concepts that can define the writing teaching curriculum?
The 5 different.
Yeah.
It looks like composing process is
Yes.
the most dominant.
That's right. Composing process. Yeah.
Numbers or text types,
The text types very good.
text functions or structures.
That's right. Structures, right? Okay. Yeah.
Maybe wants to say topical themes.
Topical themes, especially if this is a content-based learning, right? Yeah. And
I'm trying to get situated to.
yeah, we are trying to get the, say, kind of like go through all these results, right? This is actually the, say, all this information are actually presented here in our article, right? And the 5 on page 75, we can say it is a personal creative expression.
I thought about your anecdote.
That's right, that's right. So this is exactly what I want to discuss with you later, and I want you to reflect on your own experience and how this can echo your learning and teaching experience, right? Okay, can we think more about this? Let us go this way. For first one, the writing process, how is related to our first reading? Remember last week we actually had 3 readings, right? How is this related to our reading last week?
I was thinking that this was more on the cognitive side, in terms of processing. Last week we looked at how it was the shift from the behaviorism, right? That word is always hard for me to pronounce. Behaviorism to a more cognitive side, and I thought that this study was more of an example of cognitive processing.
Good point. So that is to say, the cognitive process is actually a center topic here in this study, right? Here, that's right. We talked about writing and product, but here the first concept that actually pop up is writing and process, right? It's very good. Then how about another? Just now we mentioned the number 5, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to say more?
It seems like to me that would be almost the hardest one for second language writers.
That's right.
Is the creative process. Because it's so unstructured, and the opposite is almost what writers look for. Even first language writers. What is the structure that I can write with? And once that's taken away, some people could run with it like you did, but I can also see the exact opposite.
That's right. Remember, when we talked about this personal creative expression in our second article written by Silva, that's very interesting. Remember, one story goes like, this student feel like, he didn't learn anything because the native speaker just gave them a task and throw the task, let you write and write, right? And then they didn't have like the given templates or such a kind of like vertical moves to analyze, right? That is actually really interesting because on one hand we know this, what do you call this, by the way? Last week we learned it. Cognitivist versus expressivist. Very good, right? So expressivist, say focuses on the teachers, the students, for example, like fluency, as well as their, freedom, the voice. They try to voice their opinions, their perspectives, or even their creativity, right? Also, when you write, never stop, never think about, never worry about your grammatical mistakes, just write, right? And this little, was like that. The teacher gave us music to play on, and we rolled and wrote a really long piece, and kind of like let our imagination soar, right? That is something to do with this one. But do you think that this is actually only part of the result? He mentioned like just 1 or 2 instructor mentioned, right? This is a good opportunity for students to express, say themselves personally and creatively, right? But most of them focus on the writing essay process, how to compose, how to say draft, how to revise, right? Mention that one. Now, how about genres? Any relationship between this one and our readings we read last week? Did you remember the different concepts we discussed? Writing as a sentence level, right? Yeah. Writing as a discourse level learning, or writing as a process, and writing, say, for language in use, right? Yeah, how this related, the genres and text types.
From last week, we learned that the language writing used in context. An example might be English specific purposes.
Yeah.
So here, the focus, you hear some examples like lab notes and those type. And so this kind of fits in with that example.
Very good, Mimi. So here, we take a look at these text types, and you can see some of them actually belong to English for specific purpose, right? They come from a different discipline, right? So here, the experienced teachers actually mentioned about that, right? They have actually assigned different text types and genres for the students, right?
How much does that overlap with the topical themes?
For topical theme, in my opinion, that is more geared toward like the common sense of the culture, or the society,
Right.
or the health. We do not really focus on the disciplined knowledge. Does it make sense?
Okay, yeah.
For example, if I give the students the topic, American movies, or for example, British novels, whatever, right? Then you can definitely draw on your common sense and your own previous knowledge to actually express yourself, right? So that is more topical thing. Does it make sense? But if we talk about genre, we talk about the text types. We really focus on the English for academic purposes or English for specific purposes. If we talk about English for academic purposes, we'll address types such as annotated bibliography, right? If you teach first year writing, every time we feel, oh, that is really important task, because if we are an academic writer, you need to, say synthesize and analyze the article, then annotated bibliography might be an important text type, right? This needs you to actually give them explicit knowledge. Does it make sense?
Yes.
And of course, English for specific purposes have a lot of examples, right? As we said, if you learn language work, you definitely want to draw on your discipline and knowledge.
Yeah, that's what immediately comes to head, CSP.
That's right. But I agree there should be some overlapping, of course, because of course they talk about different things, right? But at this moment, for me, when the topical things, say pop up, I feel like, okay, that is more kind of like a general knowledge, about the society, Does that answer your question,
Yes,
Jack?
absolutely.
Good, very good. Then, so that is pretty much the, say here, the 5 concepts. It's actually kind of like, complementary to our readings, right? Last week. Now, how about the second results? What is the findings regarding the independent courses versus integrated curriculum? Did the instructors use integrated curriculum more, or they use individual course? They taught individual writing course.
Which one?
In this study, did they teach English as a second language writing as an individual course, or they integrated a lot of, for example, language skills and the writing part of it?
They did both.
They didn't integrate it more, in my opinion.
You mean the results?
Right. I'm not sure if I understand your question. Did you say?
Because when you talk about the independent courses, means that they just offer that second language writing course,
Right.
right? But if you do the integrated curriculum, means that writing is part of the curriculum, but you do not teach the second language writing as a separate course. For example, when I was a college student, say English teacher in China, we usually taught integrated language skills. So that is to say, we always have college English 1, college English 2, all these courses are actually integrated courses.
Right.
So writing is just a part of it, right? We actually didn't teach writing as a separate course, right? How about the results?
The majority of them weren't.
That's right.
Yeah.
Majority, that's right. Exactly, very good. So majority of the classes are integrated, right? Okay. Then how about the next one? How about the results regarding specific versus general purposes? The writing for specific purposes or writing for general purposes? Then what are the findings about general purpose and a specific purpose?
It weighted towards the general.
Yeah. Especially for, say, English as a foreign language learner.
Yes, and I guess conceptually that makes sense because it's broader.
Exactly. It's broader and it gives the students basic foundational knowledge, right? Okay. Yes. Any other thought about the third findings regarding specific versus general purpose? I remember one, say from Hong Kong, actually focused on the English for specific purposes, particularly English for academic purposes, right? So how to do these academic genres, how to write, for instance, research proposals, so something like that. But some others, I remember he mentioned that these are just for specific purposes, especially, for example, they have some immigrant students, right? Immigrant students, for example, in New Zealand, right? So then they definitely want to address more about the general purposes, right? How to write in general, even how to write an email, right? something that you can interact
I saw
with.
that and I was like, I'm gonna do that with my students.
That's right. Don't you think so? Because this is your daily life,
Yeah.
right? You need to learn so that you can actually perform well and negotiate well and interact with your, say whatever peers here in the community, right? Okay.
I think that the majority was more for academic purposes than for specific purposes because they said 11 out of the 48.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we need numbers there, right? We need statistics there. Yes, that's right. So once again, usually when you do such kind of surveys or interviews, if you want to do the descriptive data, that's wonderful because we can know the trend, right? So that is called descriptive data. Have you ever heard of we have descriptive statistics versus inferential statistics? Are you familiar with that? Statistics have two types. Descriptive statistics, like this one, we say percentage. We calculate means, standard deviations, right? So this is called statistics too. That is a descriptive statistics. If you do the correlation analysis, something like statistical analysis, then we call it inferential analysis because you want to generalize a certain findings. Hope that you can, of course, transfer this or even generalize it to the different contexts, right? So it's good. Statistics works here, right? So very good. So the percentage showed us, right? Very good. Can we move on? The second big perspective is about assessment. Remember what the author mentioned about the assessment? There are different types of assessment for the language, say instruction, right? So if you want to use classroom assessment, what specific techniques in use according to this article? If that is a specific purpose orientations, I think they use certain techniques, right? If that is a general purpose orientations, then they use some other assessments. Would you remember that?
So you're talking like the competency-based?
Yes, very good. Competency-based assessment is really a good tool for what? For the specific purposes, right? Because you really want to focus on students' behaviors or have they achieved, right?
Can they
competence. Perform, how they perform, very good. Don't you think so? I remember they mentioned that. Or sometimes I think they even do the self-assessment, right? Not only you as instructor, say check or say evaluate these competencies. You can also have your students or even your peers, right? The peers to evaluate each other, right? So competency-based rubrics assessment is a really good way, right? For specific. But how about general purposes? Did you remember?
Proficiency tests.
Yes, proficiency tests. That's so common. I mean, in China, you can share with me your experience, okay?
Yeah.
Because I still remember whatever textbooks you use, whatever instructional, methodology, whatever pedagogy you use in the whole country, the students need to pass college English exam, right? So we have like Band 4 and Band 6. Band 4 is a little bit like average level. If you pass Band 4, so you're good to go. But for those who are advanced, they need to pass CET, college English test, Band 6, right? And something like that. So you do the proficiency test. That's right. Anything else?
In France, they have these proficiency tests for ESL learners, where I think it's a European thing.
Yeah.
They have the A1, A2, B1,
B1,
B2,
that's right.
C2.
Good.
Right. But the thing with proficiency tests is they're not really in line with the curriculum sometimes, and it causes a lot of frustration for the students because what they learn in the classroom is not always what they
assess later, right? Exactly. I still remember the situation when the instructors focus on analyzing the text in the English classes. Meanwhile, the students who actually just got so, say exam-oriented, focus on their vocabulary book. This is the Chinese situation years ago. Getting to say, I, the instructor, may teach you something, they feel like that may not be so useful dealing with the tests. But instead, they even want to go to take some other courses outside the class. For example, like in China, there is one called New Oriental. Have you ever heard of that?
What's it called?
New Oriental. Xindongfang New Oriental. That is kind of like a test, the organization. Test training organization. They teach you how to, take exams well, right? They actually have a lot of strategies. Those students definitely got a lot of excellent, say scores in the final exam, especially like the TOEFL, say like, say IELTS. They actually got very successful. You know what I mean? So, of course, there are a lot of debate on this. Should you really teach for the tests, right? We just
and I understand completely from the student, because I taught some of that when I was in Taiwan as well. The point of view is they have that goal. It's okay to teach it that way. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
I don't know if you're teaching to the test, are you really acquiring the second language?
But I guess I look at it from what are they, because what are they tasking me with to do?
Mm-hmm.
Are they tasking me to give them great general English skills? No, they have very specific. I want you to do this. Teach me this way.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
what I'm here for. I
Okay.
can't say, I'd rather do this. You have a specific role.
So what do you think of the final goal? Are you happy with the final goal students' outcomes? Judging from like the approach you are advised to do.
I'm happy in the sense if they do well in it.
Oh, okay.
Because if not, then any other opportunity down the road they don't get.
That's right.
It opens doors.
Yeah. So if they, regardless of what I think of testing is okay, without that, there's nothing else.
Yeah.
That's the door you got to walk through first.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So-
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So we have a proficiency test, and some of other assessments actually indicated in the article, right?
Rating scales.
Test scales, right? That's right. Rating scales like even like the score, right? You just assign certain instructor people score, something like that. You write a paper and I score you if this advanced level or intermediate level. Something to do with writing tests. I should say the text-based, say rubrics may play a role, right? Yes. Okay. Any other thoughts about the first perspective, the second perspective regarding assessment? So we will learn a lot of assessments you can do in your second language writing classes, right? So when we talked about Dr. Ferris and Hitchcock's, resources, and we will know a lot of, say hands-on, say strategies you can do. Okay. That's right. That's right. Yeah, but at this moment, we just feel like, okay, these are some techniques or the assessments, say ways that our experienced instructors have adopted, right? Okay. Any other thoughts about the final perspective? What are the results? Is that similarities or the differences are more, prevalent here? We found a lot of differences, or you found a lot of just a little bit differences, but a lot of
Well, I have started here.
similarities. Yeah.
This suggests that practices are more uniform internationally.
That's right. Exactly. Right. He gave 3 good reasons, right? Did you remember that?
I think because of the teachers attending different conferences,
Yes.
just getting the same ideas.
Because especially remember, these are the experienced scholars already in the field of second language writing. So of course they have a lot of dialogues going on, and they join the academic dialogues very often by, like Yuna mentioned, say conferences, right? And or by just participating in certain workshops, or even just by reading the research, right? Yeah.
The principles remain despite the context.
That's right, exactly. Good. So, and also I remember one of the reasons he mentioned that the teachers actually have already got the experience overseas, right? They got their PhD study or their PhD degree somewhere in America, maybe, right, in the United States, and they brought those really good, pedagogies, or have already say acquired those, pedagogical knowledge, and then bring back home, right? And then you feel like, oh, there are a lot of similarities. Makes sense? Yeah. How about your experience? Don't you think these are very similar to what you did before? If you were a second language writer, second language writing instructor before, what are the similarities? With your own approach?
Well, I guess kind of why I was defending teaching to the test earlier. But the higher level teaching for secondary writing has always been toward the tests.
Yeah.
You know, to get, so it's very, it centers around that, I guess. So, and this is a genre writing. You know, there's very. I was locked into a lot of things.
Yeah.
So when I saw a lot of this, I was thinking, okay, that's kind of exactly how we're teaching to the test.
I see. I see. So you actually do not have a lot of flexibility, right?
No.
No.
Because your goal is to get them through.
That's right.
You know.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I totally understand it. Yeah. So we should have the, say, broad perspective on, say, different pedagogies that can be feasible, right? In a certain context. Yeah. Any other thoughts according to your own learning, second language writing, or teaching second language writing experience?
For me, I'm the reverse of John. I'm not really a big fan of proficiency tests and teaching to the test, just because I feel like it doesn't really get students very far. It just gets them through the door and then they're handicapped afterwards. So, for example, when I taught ESL in France, and I could see that a lot of these exams, they're high stressful exams. They want to just pass and just pass, and then they pass, and it's like, okay, now what? So going beyond that is hard. And my own experience when I was learning French, it's just very hard once you get past, okay, I'm past the intermediate to advanced level. Okay, the test says I'm supposed to be advanced, but I can barely make a sentence. So I think that I'm more geared towards the other forms of assessment that you talked about. I think I like more of the rating scales type, because it gives them a number, which gives them an idea of where they're headed, but it's not so like strict to like proficiency.
Too much entirely for them.
Yeah,
right? That's right.
So I think that my teaching style is more of a combination of the expressivist, because I want them to be able to express themselves and bring their own voice, which encourages agency.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Wow, this is a nice discussion. Now, taken together, let us review these questions again. If you have any comments added to question 1, how's the article related to the ones we read last week? Regarding the research in second language writing, regarding the specific pedagogy, right? So what specific, or how this click with you maybe, or did you feel there are some aha moments, something like that?
I think they both collected the data by interview.
Oh. You mean which? You mean this one with which one?
It's I can't remember exactly.
We're talking about. We actually had one from Dr. Masuta. He's actually doing a historical perspective, right? And another one, Dr. Pavio, yeah. And then actually he gave an overview of the research in the field, right? So it speaks to me actually these different concepts again, right? Always remember the writing instruction actually can be informed by writing as a process or writing as a product, right? We actually combine these two. We of course bear in mind we focus on not only the writing process but also writing product as well. Because remember last time we mentioned the history. We have the very long period that only focus on the quality work of the students' texts. Then we focus on process. But when it goes to the, say, post era, right? The area, the post-process era, and then we once again refer back to these genres, right? The rhetorical rules, and how this even for example, the templates can help, right? The students in their academic learning, right? So something like that. So once again, this overlaps in terms of the conceptions that informed our teaching, say, process. right? Do you agree? Okay, and also some other, say, details, as you can see, different, say, approaches, like, say, what we mentioned, we can do, say, specific assessment, right? So, of course, there are some studies already out there in order to inform us to, assess students better, right? So, very good. Good. Now,
I was thinking of the fact that most of the writing in courses were more integrated versus having like a writing class on its own reflects the move in second language writing. Last week you showed us the slide, the PowerPoint on the second language writing journal when it started and all that. And so for me, it kind of made sense reading this article because you see how now there's more emphasis coming towards, okay, writing can be assessed on its own and it doesn't necessarily need to be integrated with other competencies like listening, reading.
Exactly. Great. Yes. How about this research? Did you think that if you were given a chance to do this research, what would you do? Will you do something differently, something similarly? I want you to think about it when you read the, say, research study, then you think about, you kind of like critique, right? Where you reflect on your experience, then judging from your maybe knowledge in this field. Would you be happy to replicate this study? If so, what would you do? Right? So I give you, two choices. You can just discuss if you were to conduct such study, what would you do differently or similarly?
I think what this research was it's comprehensive. It looks like it takes a long time to collect all this, but what I would do differently would be to focus only on, if I'm doing just L1 writing instructors, just focus on L1 writing and then L2 writing differently because they're not necessarily the same circumstance, I think. So, and like he said, the population sizes are different. Most of right now, I've taught in the first year writing program, I've taught 1301 and 1302, and I've also taught French. So I know that they're not necessarily teaching writing in a foreign language versus teaching writing to L1 speakers is not the same. So
let me clarify a little bit. So are you talking about English as a second language versus English as a foreign language?
English as a foreign language, EFL.
Yes. I remember he actually collected the data from 6 regions, right? And then some of them, like, for example, New Zealand, right? And Canada, right? These are actually the, say, places where English is, of course, the first language, right? But however, I remember he still mentioned the population is English as a second language, right? But rather than a foreign language.
Oh, okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So for me, still, they are comparable. Because they are second language in general.
Right.
Okay. But of course, they are not exposed to the language in the EFL settings, right? For example, they cannot pick up the language either, right? Okay. But that is a good point. You are thinking about different contexts.
Right.
Right? Have you ever thought of some other contexts? I do think there are a lot of regions that deserve investigation.
That EFL countries that he has picked, yes, in these countries like Hong Kong, Japan, or China, it's still, for example, English is coming outside. Even out of the classes, the students have enough chance to use English, or even when they go to a school, some books and some context or some texts are in English. I would go to the countries that really English is taught just in institutes, in the classes. When the students go outside, they have no chance to use it.
Okay.
Then I will try to see it.
Okay, so that is to say you may even prefer more in the context of EFL, right? Exactly. So English is a foreign language because you feel like instruction is so important, right? Yeah. Especially the region coursework is so important for them because they will not have enough opportunity to learn language somewhere else, right?
Yeah, for example, Japan, because I have seen, yes, they have a lot of TV channels, yes, in English. But for example, I will go to my country, Iran. Then they have just one channel in English and it is all the time one part.
Ah, I
Yes.
see.
So I will try to see is the result, for example, what happens
Yeah.
when I take this to Iran.
Yeah,
Instead
that's
of
really
Japan.
good. That's really good. So the different regions that may have different exposure for students, right? Especially language exposure, I should say, right? That's right. Very good. Even like the not so affluent countries, right?
Or country, I think most of these countries, I think all of them have mandatory English programs.
Oh yeah, having this
Yeah.
mandatory. That's
So
right.
pick a country that didn't.
That's right. Very good. And then you can definitely see some gaps over there, right? And how informed the teaching in those areas. That's wonderful. I love this regarding context. Very good. Anything else? Think about, say different components of the research. What else you may do differently?
I think that it's from the findings of, the findings in New Zealand differed from the findings in Hong Kong in that the New Zealand one was more, it seemed like the students focused on, like the teachers focused more on student autonomy versus in Hong Kong where it's more bilingual ed and things like that.
That's right.
So maybe if they did a study that focused on what learner motivations were and what really leads them to be able to write better.
Okay.
What kinds of is it because in New Zealand English is the official language, like Reza was saying, or is it because they have more, their environment plays a role in it?
That's right.
Versus in Hong Kong where you may not have as much opportunities.
In Hong Kong, it's okay. You still get a lot of exposure, Yeah, but I mean, maybe not
as much as in New Zealand.
Thailand, maybe, right? Yeah, yeah. That's right. So you're talking about the, say, students' motivation, right? Students' motivation. So that is to say you would like the teachers to comment on the students' motivation? That's interesting.
No, I mean the students' perceptions of their own what really.
Okay.
So instead of doing the instructors, this time flip it around and do students. Maybe.
So that study would be the extended one, right? So we usually do not call that a replication, right? But that is really excellent point. You want to actually extend it. You do not only focus on the teacher's perspectives, you want to take a look at the student's perspectives, right? And how this connected, right? And
To kind of tag on to that, also you could maybe look at it with not such experienced teachers.
Exactly.
Because I can understand why there's such uniform, because they probably know each other.
Yeah, I agree.
Presented in front of each
I
other.
even like, oh, this must be somebody. This must be somebody who are interviewed. Of course, yeah, I know. Yeah, I have
So
the same
maybe
feeling. Yeah,
not beginners, but somewhere in the middle maybe.
that's
And
right.
see if, people have taught 4 or 5 years.
That's right. Exactly. So that is to say, you will be happy. Say, do other type of purposeful samples, right?
Yeah.
So the purposeful samples, those are those teachers who actually have some experiences, for example, like 5 to 10 years experience in
Professionals,
professionals,
not just doing it for a couple of years, or
That's
whatever, but,
Uh-huh.
but certainly not at,
So let's go
the
at
top.
the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, top, even like remote scholars there, right? I agree. And the results might be so different, right? Exactly. How about the approaches, each instrument, any data you want to connect? I mean, any instruments you may use, not just like the interviews. If you really want to take a look at how these, say, writing pedagogies, say, are implemented, right? You may even combine them to the classroom observations, right?
Okay, yeah, exactly. Next time I'm trying to observe the class for a while
Uh-huh,
to see exactly the process they're going
that's
through.
right.
But sometimes, for example, you ask the teacher or the students about the process or about the method that they're using, how to teach that.
Uh-huh.
But totally, when you go into the class, it is
It's different,
something different.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, like the teacher said, I actually implemented communicative language teaching approach, right? Then when you went to the class, that's some language teaching.
You need all the time just repeating it.
Exactly. Yeah. So the teacher's perspectives versus teacher's actual actions and the behaviors in the classroom, right? Yeah. By the way, technically, I would say the interviews can even be added. So, for example, I mean, the artifacts can even be added to the interviews. For me, if I were to do this research, I would have them have their, say, syllabus ready, bring that with me, to me as a, say, interviewer, right? And then, for example, your instructional material, and then we can discuss these materials together, right? Not just say something like that and show me, right? You can see the evidence, right? Why you believe, say, you organize this way, right? So take a look at the syllabus and then we discuss how these are implemented in the classrooms.
You can even watch this teaching session, say, okay, what was going, why did you do this?
Exactly. Watch the teaching sessions, but how they, they organize the class activities. Right? Good. Right? Lastly, before I move forward, I want you to take a look at the differences between the here I have that one, approximate replication versus conceptual replication. Have you ever heard of a replication study? Replication study. Replication study is actually usually those study who that repeats, mainly I should say, for example, research design, and to see whether the same results can be derived in the same context or even a different context, right? So I want to draw your attention to the differences between approximate replication versus conceptual replication. For me, just recently, I just feel like replication research is actually important, right? There are tons of renowned scholars who have done some research, for example, that is so similar in a field. Do you want to do the replication in using different contexts, or you choose a certain different, say variables, right? Then that would be helpful. Does it make sense? Even in the lab meeting today, I mentioned that our, say students, especially the PhD students, may be happy to take a look at the, similar work, and they may consider replicating a study in some way, right? So when you do this, you do not always just repeat. So remember, replication does not mean repetition, right? So you don't just want to repeat. You want to see, for sure, you want to do approximate replication or conceptual replication. Do you know the differences? Can you guess?
One is more of this is the design and this is the theoretical concept behind it. Maybe?
Yeah, makes sense. Here, when you do the approximate, say, replication, that is to say, you try to repeat some aspects, right? Maybe you just change the one not so major, variable, right? For example, you may just add a certain instrument, to the study, right? Or you just change the context a little bit, right? But when you do the conceptual replication, you really feel like, oh, this is really important, problem, statement. So saying to say, you want to solve this problem, but your research design can be different. Does it make sense? For example, you say, oh, I want to know how the teacher's conceptualization of the writing affects the student's learning, right? Then I know the teacher's, conceptualization of writing instruction will be important. Then you just focus on that problem, right? You continue to analyze, to explore that topic, but you have different approach to do so. Does it make sense? You don't really need to do, for example, the interviews. You can do a survey. You can have the large-scale questionnaire, right? But of course, include short answer questions as well as like scale something. You know what I mean? So that is something different. But why it is called still replication? Because you want to solve the same, say, questions, right? You want to, because you ask a really similar question, right? But the way to solve or the way to resolve it is different, right? Okay, so that is something that you want to consider, right?
So
you have, yeah.
So I want to understand it. So for approximate replication, you are looking at a similar thing, but asking different questions. This time it's like the window has changed, but you're looking at the same thing, but using a different, you're using the same style, maybe interviews, but the questions are different. Whereas for conceptual, you're asking completely different questions.
How do you define questions? If that is a research question, I would say you actually remain that research question. That's the reason why that is called conceptual replication. If the research questions are different, then that is not a replication study. Does it make sense?
Right.
For example, I still want to focus on the teacher's conceptualization of their writing instruction, right? And then this is a overarching question. What are the students? What are the teachers for? What are the novice as well as experienced second language writing instructors conceptions of blah blah blah, right? And then repeat that in research problems you might.
Right. Don't you think you might get in trouble with other scholars since they have maybe found these findings and published it, and then someone asks the same questions, and then you're using a different? It's like, okay, mine wasn't good enough. I don't know.
Replication study is debatable, but still we see the value. Because for me, I see the value. Just recently, I just realized, some journals actually devote a certain column to replication study. I feel that's interesting. Last time I mentioned I was invited to actually contribute to a survey, say discussing second language writing and technology dissertation. Right, last time in the same journal, language teaching research. So if you go to check using the library website, so the teaching research, language teaching research. In that journal, they also sought the manuscripts that address, say replication studies, because they really want the, say more investigators to, say delve into those so important problems, so important research questions.
Especially landmark studies.
This is good. So good word, thank you. So landmark, say essays, and you want to go, further and take a look at different angles, maybe.
So the approximate and conceptual, just to kind of tie it to our last paper. So an approximate replication of the paper we just looked at would be to use, instead of maybe the highest level of teachers, like to use kind of normal.
Right.
And then a conceptual replication would be instead of like you said, use something with the Likert scale.
That's right. Okay. That's right. But your design can be different.
Yeah.
Good. See, sounds exciting, huh? There are tons of research for you to do. Okay. Then, last thing. Any other comments about this article? Real good, right? So in this way, I think we can actually understand this article better, right? And we try to figure out what are the takeaways that you can get, right? So we know for sure, okay, I can do this in my future, say research. Or I can say, I definitely want to, say implement such things in my teaching. Or even I just say, I just want to raise my awareness of such, issues in my second language writing classes, right?
How much has the attitude towards replication studies changed in, say, the past 10 years?
This is a great question. I do not think that I'm really experienced in the replication studies, but I just feel like there are not many replication studies out there recently during this decade. That's the reason when I actually searched the say language teaching research journal, I thought, wow, they actually devoted one column to it, So I feel like there must be some need, because so many journals ignored it, at least they do not encourage it, right? Okay, you can do the manuscripts, of course, can, have a replication study, but in that journal, it just gives a certain column, and they invited the authors to submit their papers, using replication study, Yeah, but for me, I think it is still debatable, right? Yeah, of course, of course. But for you, like in the future, you will do your dissertation. You definitely want to do the replication study for your own research, of course. But sometimes, if you feel like I'm really interested in this topic, I even doubt the results, I want to do it myself this time. I mean, you as a researcher to cure. I mean, to for example, to because of this curiosity, right? And you can do it, and then it can be a good piece for publication. Right? I just really want to give you a lot of perspectives, and you decide. Only you yourself know for sure what specific approach you want to use, right? But I don't think that you really want to waste a lot of time, say in just kind of like this type of research, because for your future projects, for your dissertation, you should have something new. You want to bridge the gap. You want to contribute to the field by using a totally innovative, say approach. Or like you should, of course, contribute to the field by adding a new knowledge, right? But anyway, replication study can add a new knowledge, right? But we still need to argue whether we should have the replication studies in our field. My sense is that we need it, right? But that is not your own focus. Good. Second one, what do you think of this one? Something to do with storytelling, right? Okay, once again, Dr. Silva. All of you know him, right? Dr. Tony Silva. No, he's really a big name in second language writing. Please remember this name, Tony Silva. He is actually a founding editor for Journal of Second Language Learning, a Journal of Second Language Writing. He's also a founding chair for Symposium on Second Language Writing. So that is to say, he is actually an influential person who actually put this field forward. And then everybody feel like, oh, you are actually a giant, say the fathers of the, I should say, we should say teachers of teachers, right? He feel like the father of the fathers in the field. Yeah, I can coin it. He usually attended, the conferences very actively. Till now, he still was very active, I should say, even though he didn't contribute, produce as much as before. But I can tell still now he's still kind of like devoted to the field. Because if you check the Journal of Second Language Writing, you always can see a certain column called annotated bibliography of the current, issues or current, research in second language writing. It is he and his students who actually contribute to the annotated bibliography. Does that make sense? So it is so helpful. If you want to do research in the future on second language writing, and you can definitely go ahead and check what are out there. The annotated bibliography usually, for example, one issue may cover half a year, right? Another issue may cover the rest half a year, right? So I think that is really updated information, very helpful. But the annotation is really short, but that's still good because at that moment you feel, oh wow, a lot of people do this and a lot of people do that, and then you can definitely feel like, okay, you are trying to add your voice, right, or contribute to a certain field. But again, so I would encourage you to take a look at his annotated bibliography in the Journal of Second Language Writing. Okay, so again, if you like to check his website, and I think here is more information about him. So this is him. Take a look at here. So he directs the ESL writing program in the Department of English at Purdue University. I would say he is actually an expert too in rhetorical composition, not only just like second language writing, because he's actually a rhetorical and composition person and knows the second language writing, a lot. So that is his contribution, right? So he edited the Journal of Second Language Writing here. He co-edited a lot of books, co-authored a lot of books. Take a look at them, okay? I read some of them. These are really, important resources in our field. Okay?
I think we read some of his papers for the colloquium we had for the teacher teaching 13.
Possibly.
Dr. Pauschik.
Yeah.
I think we read one of his papers actually.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Again, let us do an analysis of the, textual analysis, which we could say, right? So of this study. So once again, what are the, purposes, the aim of the study, the goals of the study, participants, talk about the participants, and the research approach, again, different approach, okay? And then the data collecting. Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes to discuss, and then we'll, wrap up together. Okay, what did you find out? What is the purpose of this study?
Because they found that it's like L2 writers. It's just recent that we've been focusing on their voice and getting them to write their own stories.
Exactly, their own voices.
Right.
Because kind of like others told their stories. They themselves need to tell the stories, right? So that is actually a good, say motivation here, right? So we motivate you. We definitely we are motivated by the gap there, right? The gap is that we don't want the researchers, analyze other stories. We want those learners, themselves voice, say how the, say writing process, actually went on, in their own lives. Don't you think so? Very good. So I do think that they mentioned that there is a gap because, they only recently have second-hand writers been given opportunity to tell their stories, right? So very few opportunities. So now I will give them opportunities. Don't you think that was so so generous, right? He invited them to do the narrative, and then they become authors, right? They become the co-authors. And also, this is really his, aim that he wants to kind of like push this specific, research approach forward. So that is to say, you ask the learners to tell their stories, to just write down. This is also something like the autobiography, right? So they have their autobiographies, and then you include their autobiographies. Then you, as an instructor, as your researcher, you just need to analyze those things that emerge from all these stories, right? You can weave these stories coherently, right? So I love this approach. What do you think of it? By the way, what do you call this?
How is this different than, say, economics?
Because for me, still, you really not focus on the person's lively experiences in great detail. Because still, you have some very specific, say questions in mind. So they just teach you, they just tell part of their certain life, right? For example, we just focus on a second language writing learning experience. Do you think so? And then it's not you yourself who write the story, because later it's the, say researchers who reflect on your stories, who compare your stories with other stories, so that they come up with a commonalities. Okay. Does it make sense? Yeah. So we call it narrative inquiry, right? So that is to say, the narrative inquiry can be conducted by the researchers themselves, or they can invite, so those specific persons to join, and then they analyze their stories. Does it make sense? Okay. Good. So this is called narrative inquiry, right? So tell me about the participants. So what do you know about those participants?
There are 5 writers, yeah?
Yeah. They are still learners, we can say, language learners, right? But they're, again, experienced, right? Yes, very good. So from different regions, different countries, right? Okay. What are the data? Let's see. What specific data?
Exactly. He collected their writings and then compared them together and rated them.
Yeah, so the main,
interpreted the writing.
Exactly. The data, I should say, are actually their own writing, right? They're writing about the narratives, I should say. They're narratives about their writing learning process, right? Okay, so here is what he did. He actually gave the students the task going like, please address the development and the current state of the ability to write in a second language, right? So if you take a look at my assignment this week, and you will get a chance to write your narrative about this. So that is to say, you focus on what specific aspects. Let me take a look. You should focus on not only the process, I should say. Let me take a look. So here, you write a brief text in which you address the development and the current state of your ability to write in a second language in terms of rhetorical, linguistic, strategic, and any other relevant issues. Right? So I know
I really liked that.
I feel like you have a really wonderful story to tell. I hope I get an opportunity to publish with Dr. Silva, but anyway, just because of the convenient sampling. I was not selected. I had also a lot to say. I remember when he did this research, he tended to actually recruited a lot of participants at Purdue University. So if you take a look at the right there, say bio, and you can tell, oh, okay, this person graduated from Purdue University, right? It is kind of like we call it convenient sampling, right? Yeah, because maybe they know the students for sure, right? Oh, this student is really so motivated, right? Maybe he get a chance to teach the students, right? As well. Yeah, okay. So you have your own stories, and I will take a look at. But I give you really short, say, text there, and I don't want you to write 1,000 words because I cannot publish this, you guys, on your radios. I just need you to write 5 or 600 or even 400. Okay, does it make sense? Yeah, I remember I enjoyed writing similar tasks when I was a PhD student. That was really amazing because you feel like, wow, you kind of like, reflect on your own experience and you tend to voice out. And I remember last time when we did that in a, say, qualitative research study class. And we were actually need to write something about our, say, personal life experience, something like that. Our struggling, our, say, challenges, as well as, of course, our success as a female PhD student, whatever. Those are really good topics. I feel that's so good. I love it. Okay, let us talk more. Let us talk more about this narrative inquiry. If you are interested in it, you must be a good storyteller. Do you think you are a good storyteller? You're not so sure. Usually, I was like that. I thought, I was not a good storyteller. But once you delve into this research approach, you feel everybody can tell a story. Everyone has a story to tell, right? You can be a good storyteller, right? So narrative inquiry is a qualitative, once again, qualitative research approach to gather information for the purpose of research through storytelling. So that is to say, you try to capture the detailed stories of the single life, or you can capture the lives, the exciting stories of the lives of different people. So that is to say, like this article, we can see not only one individual's life, but also 5 together, right? 5 narratives. We can do individual one, we can do multiple, individuals. Say narratives. Okay, so here narrative, we usually define narrative as a spoken or written, say, a text, right? So that is to say, you can interview the, say, participants, right? Then they can give the oral, say, text. But also like this article, you just give them a chance to write, right? So the narrative can be the written text, giving an account of the event or actions, or even a series of events or actions, right? Did you notice that? Usually, narrative is actually chronological, right? You have actually discussed what happened first, in the past, and what is going on right now, and what we would envision in the future, right? Something like that. Got it? Okay, so by the way, this is chronological connected. Methods, the data. Of course, you can have the students, or you can have the participants to have interview with you, right? You just interview them. Or you can have them write journals, right? You write journals and you collect those data and then you analyze it. And this can be a good story. And then the autobiography, okay? And then they, they can just write, like this narratives, I would say, you can have them do the, say, biographies. Is that clear? And lastly, when you do the analysis, do remember your main goal is to derive the themes that emerge from the stories. You don't want to just combine these pieces. You want to see why they are connected, right? You want to synthesize the themes that emerge. Because we can always find out some similarities, some common issues that pop up, right? That's the reason that we can draw a conclusion about this particular book. Right? So you want to, say, have a themes. I think this article really, say, did well in this. They have different themes that emerge, and we will discuss these themes together. Before we discuss the findings, I would like you to take a look at these 2 books. Last time I mentioned since you are PhD students, if you are interested in qualitative study, and then I would definitely recommend this book. So this is called Qualitative Inquiry and Research Design, Choosing Among 5 Approaches. So actually it introduces 5 different qualitative approaches. One of them is called the narrative inquiry. Okay, once again, the author is Dr. John Percival. Okay, the big name in this field. Take a look at, say how others did narrative inquiry. Okay, this one is his work too. But actually, this does not only focus on the qualitative study, it also focuses on the quantitative as well as mixed methods approaches. So that you say, if you just really want to know the field, like if you are graduate students, right, you really need to look at this book. Even the graduate students, master who pursues a master's degree, I strongly encourage you to, read this book, because this book really gives you the foundational knowledge about research design, whether you want to do qualitative, or you want to do quantitative, and mixed methods. After taking a look at this book, read this book closely, and then you'll see they give you really, good. They will give you a good understanding of the field, research methods. So these are the 2 methods book I would strongly recommend. Okay. Now the stories. How do the 5 stories echo your own experience? Remember when Dr. Silva drew those conclusions, he mentioned the students' affect. He mentioned the composing strategies, their composing process, the written models, the importance of the written, for example, guides, right? Some artifacts, I should say. The reading is important too. The rhetorical structures, the rhetorical elements when you write, you attend to. And also, how about errors? How do you treat errors? What do you think of errors? And the teacher feedback and the peer feedback. Any thought? How can these stories echo your experience? Or you can just tell your experience. Maybe you have similar experience. Some of them are different.
How helpful and appreciate teacher feedback.
Okay, good. So you really feel teacher feedback plays an important role in shaping your, writing a lot, right? In which way?
I think it's personalized.
Okay.
And it also, there's an effective aspect to it.
Okay, good. Especially the give you confidence, right? You move forward.
Right, or not even confidence. Maybe it's the opposite. But
oh, really? Okay.
But it's
helpful.
Corrective, and it cares enough to write,
Okay.
more than just an X.
So is that to say, right, you rely on your first language learning experience? Or second language?
Some second language.
Some second as well. Okay. So then I want to learn more. Okay, teacher feedback. So are you talking about the teachers in high school or teachers in college? Okay, cool. What kind of feedback have you already received?
This is years ago.
Okay.
And it was my Spanish class, and I guess the feedback was because it was positive necessarily, but it was so directed and specific.
I see. So that is to say, you actually got a lot of even a corrective feedback from the teachers.
It was.
And then you know for sure. See, I'm accurate now, right, in this grammatical, knowledge, right? Good. Got it. Very good. So John has really a good, very positive experience working with teachers, right? Any other thought?
For me, out of all the 5 stories, I think the one I connected most with was Natalie, the second person who was born in France, but then ended up growing up in the U.S. Context with parents who spoke French. And I had a similar background too.
Yeah.
I was born in Ghana, but then I grew up in French, Francophone countries in Africa. And so my education from, say, 1st grade to 6th grade was all in French. However, I'd come home and my parents would speak English, but my writing in English I was not very confident. So for her writing in French was not very confident until later on. And I feel like the thing that stood out to me the most reading the Silver chapter was, not the Silver, the chapter. I'm sorry, I was going to say the Silver chapter. was that it seems like there's a disconnect between lower level language classrooms and upper level language classrooms. It seems like when you're a beginner, the emphasis is not on writing. It's like they just want you to understand comprehension and more speaking drills. And then when you get higher into English classes or French classes, then they let you write more at that point. And I think that that's where the panic comes from. And so reading this, I thought that it's interesting that it cuts across both ESL and EFL contexts, that they don't let you write from the beginning. I don't understand why we don't encourage writing in lower level language classrooms, but wait till you hit the intermediate advanced levels. Now, okay, now write about this.
Can you expand on the panic part? What do you mean by that?
So I'll give you an example. When I learned English, the beginning levels is more, we're teaching drills, speaking drills and things like that. And then once you get to college and start taking, say, the 300 level, 400 level classes, now it's more reading and writing oriented than speaking. And then you're like, wait, what? So now, okay, write a 5-page paper or 6-page paper. Whereas in the lower level classes, you write maybe a sentence or two in the lower level classroom.
So it's a new expectation.
Yes. So it causes some sort of panic now. It's like there's a big gap in between the lower beginner, low intermediate versus the high intermediate and advanced levels.
There's a big jump in both expectations and consequences.
That's right. Did you have the same experience? No? You feel like step by step, gradually you're getting there,
Always very basic. And the writing I was never very good at. Speaking, I was in Spanish at least, because I spent a lot of time, I worked in Belgium a lot.
I see.
And the speaking got fairly good. But writing.
Okay, I do think that you gave me the thought about the differences between writing to learn versus learning to write. So I think that's so good, this example, because in the very beginning, when you are the, say, lower level student, you feel like the teachers, I would say, will say, oh, I can do your writing task, but just during this small writing task, I want to know how to acquire the language and the second language, right? So not exactly like how I should teach you how to write, but instead, when you write, after you write, and then you get a chance to use the language. Does it make sense? So this is exactly approach that we know now is known as the learning, say, writing to learn, right? But on the other hand, we needed to learn to write, right? Especially, for example, like a freshman conversation class, right? Later, as they say, the writing classes, we definitely needed to say that for sure, what are the genre expectations? What you really need to, include in your paper? What are the structures you should follow? What are the, the conventions you should, say, abide by, right? So these are something to do with learning to write. So, right, these are two different approaches. So, it definitely can.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that it cuts across almost all those stories. They were like, it's like in the beginning it was all easy, and then now it's like, oh, now write.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Like writing is like the other skill. It needs practice, but like you don't just jump from being a beginner to an advanced overnight.
But by the way, my question is, did you really learn this second language writing explicitly? Did you get explicit instruction about how to write in second language? Or even the first language? Academic writing, for example.
For me, no.
No.
Really?
Then how did you get it? How did you acquire all this?
Exactly. When I'm thinking about it, they never taught us how to write. Even while I was going to the high school, so my parents enrolled me in an English institute. So there all the time we had, some drills. Even they were grammatical drills, or whenever they wanted to they asked us to write, just they made us, I don't know, paraphrasing some words or just paraphrasing another story or a paragraph. So even when I started studying English as a student, I went to the college. Again, the main focus was on grammar. They never taught us how to write.
Yeah.
Even when we had some assignments on writing, just they said, okay, go and this is the topic, go and write about it.
That's right.
So all the time Googling to find some models, then following the models, and sometimes copying some parts, plagiarism, yes. And the teachers, exactly what did they do? Just they corrected the structure. They corrected, okay, this is the first paragraph, this is the second paragraph. Yeah, even, for example, when I was doing my master's, I can remember just last night I was writing this story. I thought even while doing the master's, they asked us to write papers. Even when I did, for example, 2 papers, and they were ready to be published, when I gave to my professors, again, they did it, all the points, or this is the way they corrected. Again, the punctuation, again, the words, changing the word, changing the
it's just the sentence level, your superficial level, it's errors, right?
They never put, for example, some ideas there, okay, this is the way you should write, this is the way you should, for example, I don't know, convey your ideas or to this paper.
Exactly.
I think that is the thing that
I do think that a lot of people experience that. Yeah.
He touches on something that we'll talk about in the next paper. So remind me when we get to the next paper.
Okay, you want to go ahead and.
Well, they were talking about when they were grading, scoring these papers for the college students. I think it was in El Paso or whichever.
El Paso.
Yeah. If they knew that it was a second language writer, the grades were higher. So he was graded differently because they knew he was a second language writer.
That's right.
When he was telling the story, I was like, that's exactly what happened to the students in the second language.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And
I don't know if that's a very good thing. I think it's.
Yeah, it makes great sense, so, because the teachers actually did not have that so much expectations, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Because he's just a second language learner. He's good enough here. Take a look at this, right?
Yeah. I said, I was like, I don't know if that's good.
But usually,
I think what you're talking about is washback in a sense. Like when you're grading and then the other student is like, oh, this student is, somewhat good.
Yeah,
Is that what?
No, when they were grading papers, they didn't know if it was an ESL student or not. If they knew it was an ESL student, those papers got graded higher. So there was more leeway given. And so I don't know if that's good or not. And so when he was saying, immediately the light went off my head when he was saying they were just grading punctuation. They weren't grading if it was really a good paper. So they knew he was a second language student. So they were grading it differently than if he was the first language student.
But usually, I think we in the field actually encourage those who actually have expertise, not only in rhetorical and composition, but also the second language writing, to be the instructor, right? And the instructor, for sure, they actually will definitely keep the balance, right? When they are grading. For example, if I teach your second language, ELCL writing section, and of course, I will try to be, fair to everybody in this class, right? But when you talk about like the composition, scholars who teach the international students, right? Maybe he will definitely consider, this is a language writer. Maybe a little bit leeway there, right?
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense to me. But anyway, I would not so concerned so much about that because right now in my previous institution, when I teach ELCL writing, I just feel like usually we try to actually level all this assessment, and then all the writing instructors have a lot of workshops together and get trainings together, and we try to learn for sure that we are on the right track and on the same page when assessing our students. Yeah, but actually that definitely that was a great point. We need to actually be really careful. right? That's right. That's right. Any other thought about your experience, your composing strategies, written models? I know you were rather wonderful in reading. I look forward to reading them. You have something else? Talk about errors. Did you worry about error when you write? You did?
Especially, yeah, we are worried when we know that, okay. I think for me, even now, it is really stressful writing, yes, because I know I will make some mistakes. I check, I try to practice, I don't know, I Google the phrases or everything that I want to put there. But again, I know, okay, because this is my second language, I will have some mistakes there. But that makes me a little nervous. Even, for example, when I'm in speaking, when I'm talking to someone that is coming, for example, from my country, and he's got a PhD in English. When we speak English together, yes, so I can say I speak much more fluently than when I speak with someone that I know this is his first language.
Yeah.
Then I get panicked. Then I think, okay, he will judge me. He will judge my writing. He will judge my speaking. Yes, this is why I get a bit nervous, and that anxiety really influences my fluency and accuracy. So in writing, exactly that happens sometimes for me.
Really? So that is possibly you do not like the peer response then?
So this is why I really like it. Yes, this even I want to write about is the workshop I'm going to work on. Effective, yes, peer response. Yes, I know it is really, really good. Yes, but I don't know why I have always that stress, that kind of anxiety that I'm worried.
Because you have face.
Yes.
We always in pragmatics we always say face. Yeah, negative face one to your positive face one, right? You want to be praised and you want to, show, reveal all the good, say aspects, outlook to everybody, right? I think we, as human beings, of course, have such a specific experience, right? But just, maybe the degree is a little bit different, the extent. We're not so anxious about that, right? But anyway, I do think so. Even like the posting, online posts, right? Discussion posts. You really don't want to just kind of you can be very cautious, right? And you want to make sure, the languages are really good, right? Until you, submit everything, right? So I think this is good because this gives you the chance to revise and, restudy, even do more research on, website, whatever, right? Yeah. Would you think so? For me, I would say my experience of learning second language writing actually, really, I self-taught myself a lot. I learned not so much from the instructors. I just feel like I learned more by writing and by checking and referring the books. Because I'm a person who always like to ask the reference books. Every time when the teacher, a new teacher came in, I always ask, what is a good, the resource books that I can consult. Every time, the teacher may give us really different books, and then I always kind of feel like, oh, this is really good book, that is really good book. You try to digest everything. So that's the reason why I have tended to introduce a lot of books to you guys, because I benefit a lot from reading those, resource books, right? I even like the writing models, I would say, in our first language. I don't know, you guys were like that. We were actually guided to read a lot of, sample writings. Even in Chinese, right? And especially like elementary students. And then we read a lot of writing samples in, collection. And then we tried to represent our own work in a different way. Some of ideas we steal, but we try to present it using different languages. We even actually kind of tease out those important facts. What are the beautiful words we want to memorize? What are the beautiful sentences we want to memorize? We do like that. Even in Chinese, I still remember we memorized a lot of beautiful, even like the, I would say some, some complicated sentences. you try to memorize it, and later, you know, you write and you adapt it. Right? That's the reason why now we feel like Chinese students may have some problem with plagiarism, because in a second language, even like the first language learning, we actually learn by copying a lot of excellent work. But this is exactly what we want to discuss later in your writing class, the plagiarism. How to quote, how to paraphrase, how to avoid the plagiarism. These are important topics we want to cover later, right? So that is what I learned. I just feel like I benefited from a lot. I mean, from reading, a lot of reading. That's it. Right? I prefer graduate students. I don't know whether all of you read the book called Graduate Student Writing Handbook for Graduate Students by John Swales. You know that book? You know that book, very good. So next time I bring that book to you, because that is so good. You guys want to take a look at it, and especially those students who want to, say, do a dissertation or even thesis, and you really want to know for sure what are the expectations in the field of academic writing, right? They even teach you how to write a response paper. I feel like in some other classes, students are not sure, how can I write a summary in a response paper, right? I remember I assigned the students the reflection paper for, in some classes, and the students got a little bit unsure. They learned for sure. They understand my expectations. Then I share some models for them. For example, how to write summaries, how to quote, how to respond, right? And these are my expectations, right? This is not my expectations. These are all the, say, second language, or instructors' expectations in the field of academic writing, right? Okay, so anyway, I just really want to emphasize the writing models. But I benefit a lot from the, say, teacher feedback later when I was an advanced student, especially in graduate school or whatever. Then teachers' role play an important part, right? And peer feedback, a lot of peer feedback. I actually conducted my own research when I was a graduate student. I conducted a peer response strategy training for my students, and then I had that dissertation thesis. Okay. Second question, how do these narratives reflect the second language writing pedagogy? So we learned their stories, right? How can these stories reflect the writing instruction? For example, some of them attended to the textual features, right? Some of them attended to the writing process, right? How does it reflect the writing pedagogy? How they are taught?
It seems, from looking at the 5 stories, it seemed to me like there's not a very unified sense of what really the purpose of writing is in ESL sense. Like when you were talking about the learning to write versus the writing to learn perspective, it seemed like some of the experiences showed from the feedback of the teachers that the teachers were more focused on teaching grammar or vocabulary or certain lexical things, whereas others were more interested in the rhetorical aspects, rhetorical moves as the content versus the style. So it seems like some teachers are more interested in accuracy, and it reflects what their theoretical and pedagogical background is. So that really affects how the students also view second language writing.
Something that I think is, while reading those narratives, you can find that all the writers finally they compose a strategy for themselves.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
How did they do that? Sometimes they found that strategy. Sometimes their teachers or their friends help them find that strategy. But to be a writer, yes, you should find that strategy. But how it depends on you, how to get that strategy, how to have those strategies to write. And also you should have a model, yes, in your writing. You should go and find some models.
Very good. I like your point of those strategies. Actually, there is another field that is called, actually, the good topic of theirs is language learning strategies, right? And say, I know the big name like, Dr. Oxford or something. I mean, she actually has been renowned for so many years, but now strategy training is a little bit out of date. I mean, in terms of the publication, you can see not so much out there, but strategies is really something that we want to delve into, right? For me, I just feel we learn by doing, or we get good, say models, right? Exactly. Yeah.
And for we students as English as a second language, I think all the time is, I can say myself, is all the time looking for a good dictionary.
Yeah.
I had a lot of dictionaries at home.
Yeah.
Even now, yes, I've installed different dictionaries, so dictionary apps on my cell phone.
Oh, good. Yeah. Of course. Me too. We actually relied on dictionaries a lot.
But I think
English
native speakers don't do that.
Did you do like that? You memorize all the words through the dictionary? I did.
I would the opposite. I would write, then find better words for my finished product.
Uh-huh.
I was going to ask you, and all of you, when you write say you have to write a paper, do you write it in your first language first? Because we were talking about this in my 13-1 class. I have a lot
No, I didn't do that.
I never did that.
No, usually those are for like really lower level student, right? Especially like you just try to learn the language. You feel like, oh, this is sentence level.
Yeah, that was the kind of practice we used when we were, I think, maybe I was maybe about 10 or 11 years, and I was going to an English class. Our teacher used to put some sentences in Farsi and then ask the students to,
Translate.
Yeah, exactly, translate them into English. But after a while, when we, especially when I started teaching English, I can remember attending some TDC classes, they told us not to do that anymore.
That's right.
Because students,
You're thinking English,
exactly,
right?
because the students think in Farsi and then they try to translate it into English even while speaking, so it makes them a slow speaker.
That's right. Yeah.
So
And especially in writing, there's no equivalence at all, right? Yeah, I think we seldom did like that, right?
2 of my 5 students are Spanish. They think and write in Spanish first.
Oh, but would it be hard for them to understand how to write in English?
We'll see in the first paper.
Yeah, because for me, the rhetorical moves would be different, right? They're thinking, and we'll talk about that later, right?
They said if it's a complex, it's, if it's a complex thought or something, do it in Spanish first, write it down in Spanish, then work it out.
We needed to discuss this further, right? When you collect their paper and, come back and
Then
then
we can write a
discuss it.
paper on it. Think about it.
And there's 2 of the 5, and I was surprised when they said they did that.
Okay, you mean in the class, they
Yeah.
discussed how they write?
Yeah, because we were doing kind of their personal narrative, their background, and all that, and then I just happened to ask them. So I was surprised. I said, "Well,
I see.
whose English is their second language?"
I
And 5 of
see.
them raised their
I
hand.
see. Interesting. See? Good research topic, huh? Yeah, I just feel like when we were, say, taught in, say, middle school, we always are encouraged to use English dictionary rather than English-Chinese dictionary, because we really want to form the habit of thinking in English, although it is really hard to achieve. But now I feel like that is perfect. So good. We definitely, especially like when you write. Of course, for sure. What are the structures? What are specific, say, components you should include? And then you say in English, right? No problem at all at this moment. But maybe at the lower level kids, that was a little bit different, right?
And even sometimes the equivalents are not exactly the same. Yes.
I think so.
When you interpret that in your own language, you
That's
see, oh, that word is totally different.
That's right. Exactly.
We don't have any translation for the word ambitious in our language.
Yeah, because you
Because
never.
Exactly. When we
You can never
translate
be
this word ambition, ambitious in Farsi, it totally becomes negative.
That's right. Too arrogant, right?
Exactly.
I think so. Yeah. So that person is too ambitious, so we don't like it, right? Yeah. Different say implied meanings, connotations, and denotations. Okay, good. Any other thoughts?
noticed that at least out of the second voice and the third voice, both of them were talking about the impact of extensive reading and how that helped them become better writers. And I like the second, was it the third voice? The guy.
You mean the Chinese?
So yeah, Ru. Yeah, the Chinese that comes from Taiwan. He's talking about how he preferred going straight to the references instead of doing the pre-writing text, the pre-writing phase.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
But it seemed like for the most part, they really said that reading had a very good positive impact on their writing skills.
That's right.
And I thought that was true for me too. When I was learning to write in English, was being able to read more. Because when I read like books in high school, I started reading more, I could tell that my writing also improved because my vocabulary size started to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So
yes, we will be talking about the connection between reading and writing, right? So exactly. Okay. One thing you may know, some students even do the specific genre analysis during their, learning. I myself did that too. I mean, I interviewed some postdoctoral researchers in the past when I actually researched the writing for publication. In the very beginning, I'm so interested in, writing for publication, and I interviewed 5 postdoctoral researchers here in the United States, and they shared amazing strategies with me. 2 of them actually pointed out that they have their own resources combined together on a laptop. So that is to say, okay, these are my model, say, papers. And this is specifically strong in methodology part because they are scientists. This is specifically strong in the literature review part. And then they analyze each individual section. How do I do this methodology? Then I do this and do that. You remember that we talked about the genre-based learning, and Dr. John Swills gave us this specific approach that is called genre analysis. So that means they themselves, consciously, they did that. They were not taught how to do that. They tried to analyze, okay, which should go first? For example, you should actually, establish the niche, right? You should actually claim your territory, something like that. But they actually didn't know these terminologies. They know for sure they can do the, genre analysis. All of them are actually experienced learners already. They are, researchers, But you can see these strategies, they did the genre analysis by themselves.
I think I'll steal that idea.
What?
Then you're doing your own research, you didn't know it.
I think I'll steal that idea because I never thought about it. Maybe I could do that. Like pick specific good papers.
You just model it.
Right, and just if there's
Yeah, I think it helped because you actually never plagiarize that call, right?
Right.
You know for sure like what specific structures you need to look like, right? Even like your say acknowledgement in your dissertation, right? You know for sure what should go first and what should go next, right? Okay, but anyway, there is a publication by Dr. Clay Thailand. He actually discussed how you can write your dissertation, like how you can write your thanks and say acknowledgement section in your thesis or dissertation. I think that's so interesting. I loved genre-based learning a lot. Okay, so I think we still have some time for my last one. By the way, today, say this week's task, right? So the online discussion about your experience for, say second language writing learning experience, right? Focusing on the, linguistic, rhetorical, as well as strategical, issues. Okay? So always remember the due date, 2. One is for your personal response. Your initial response, Friday. Then your response to 3 peers posts, Monday. Okay? Last one. Dr. Ruicher is actually the person who actually did much more in, say, writing administration, I should say. He actually published some work in writing, second language writing, say, administration, because he is actually, say, a director for those writing program. right? So now from this perspective, you can see his paper is really different from others. Don't you think so? The style, what are the differences you can tell here? That is from WPA, right? The journal from WPA. This is actually a journal in rhetorical composition field rather than second language writing field. A different field, okay?
But this person used both qualitative and quantitative while doing this research.
What do you mean here? Why you call it quantitative?
Because he started counting the students and the number of, he got the percentage of, I don't know, ESL, EFL.
Okay, so that is to say you feel like there are a lot of statistics there.
Yeah.
Again, we call it statistics, not the inferential statistics, but the descriptive statistics, right? So you feel he did some numbers there. That's right.
I think he did some.
Yeah, some numbers here. I mean, at least it looks like the quantitative part, right? Yeah. But you know, for some reason, I think that's tricky. When I read his abstract, he mentioned that this is a mixed method study. Now, I kind of I got puzzled because in my mind, I mean, judging from this, mixed method part, we really focus on both quantitative analysis and the qualitative analysis, right? So that is to say, I was a little bit, puzzled whether we really call this rigidly. It can be called mixed methods. Because for me, if we do the mixed methods, we actually have some quantitative analysis. For example, we do the correlations, right? For example, we do the, ANOVA, or we run the t-tests, whatever, to show this statistical analysis. Does it make sense? But for me, his data definitely addresses some numbers, right? But those are not inferential statistics, right? Do you agree? Yeah, I'm thinking about that. So then I feel like maybe those composition and rhetorical persons actually view those approaches differently, right?
Yeah, I think so because I took the research methods class with Dr. Jessica Sheck,
Yeah.
and she was saying that within Comprehensive, their measurements are a little different than within linguistics.
That's
within
right.
linguistics, when we talk about quantitative, it's quantitative,
That's
and
right.
qualitative.
Exactly.
But she was saying for them, you can sort of flow in between whichever works, answers your research
I
questions.
see. I got it. I agree, right? But Rita, you are correct because you mentioned that you see some data there, right? Let's say what quantitative data there, the numbers there, right? So not only tests, but also numbers. Yeah. Any other differences? I think one thing is so striking.
MLA.
That's right. Actually,
It threw me off too.
That's right. Don't you think so? Try MLA, right? MLA style rather than APA style. So different, right? What do you like about this piece, by the way? I think some of them maybe, at least some, components are not so familiar to me, but I actually enjoy one, part. I feel like, oh, that's good. What do you think?
It seems to me that for this particular writing piece, what stood out to me is they give the authors like a little bit of description. In most of the other papers in linguistics, you just cite an author and that's it. But here, they will talk a little bit about the author before discussing their work. He talks about Silver and a little bit before.
Exactly.
So I thought that was different because in APA you don't do that.
Exactly. That is what I want to comment it on too, because I feel like that is a good way if you are really unfamiliar with this field. That is a good way for you to learn, right? I just feel like he demonstrates the knowledge of his learning so well because he told this for example, in this field, whose work is informative and whose work is insightful, and then he actually discussed them very carefully, and I go, oh, I learned that much better, so I want to read that text. I want to, read a certain, text I never, learned before, right? So I actually enjoy reading this literature part. I just feel like, oh, wow, this is a tons of information there, right? Right? Okay, now let us discuss the findings. The four placement options for the students. So you can actually place the students in a mainstream class. You can place them in a basic writing class. Also, you can place them in a ELCL writing class. And there is another one that is called cross-cultural composition. Let us talk about that. What are the options do you have, in your previous or current writing program? Do you guys meet with some sections that is called cross-cultural composition?
Really?
No? Yeah, this is actually what the composition as well as the ELCL experts want to, recommend, because those of the sections are only taught by the experts in not only composition, not only rhetoric, but also second language learning. Right, like Dr. Masuda, like Dr. Silva, those are the excellent, persons who definitely are good candidates. Like those who like those are good candidates for that. That's what's cultural comments, but it is kind of like hard to achieve, right? Because we do not have so many experts like that, right? Remember last time I mentioned that even some programs now train those instructors like this. Right? Last time I mentioned some, master's degree program. We have like major in rhetoric composition with a focus, specialization in second language writing. Right? Only those, who can teach that coursework because they have a mixture of the student body, right? Then how about ELCL? Have you really come across a lot of ELCL section in the mainstream section? I don't think this is like this at this university, right? In my previous institution, Georgia Southern University, we actually have not only the English composition class, but also the ELCL composition class, right? So we separately, teach those international students or ELCL students, or even like immigrant students, or some of them are residents. So this is why here, this topic is there, because some resident students, immigrant students would be not so happy if he has been here for a long time. Why am I English as a second language learner? I got everything. I feel like I'm quite confident, in my English ability, That's very interesting. We'll discuss that in the next slides. What are the differences between these immigrant students and the, international students? Right? Yeah, and the label. Now here comes the label. Do you think that this ESOL or ELCL composition, this label would be bad for those students who don't regard them as an English as a second language learners? The result goes like that, right? It showed like some students were not satisfied with that label, right? But how about multilingual composition? Would that be good? If I have a course title called multilingual composition. What are the results?
But again, multilingual, some students were talking about that when you think it's a multilingual, it means that you should know some language.
Yeah, that's right. So the results revealed that some students totally misunderstood it, right? They feel like, oh, are you going to teach writing in French, writing in Spanish, right? But we're talking about those who actually learning English as a second language, right? Okay, so that is to say, multilingual composition can be problematic, a little bit for some students who never know those terms, right? So that is to say, training is important. We want to have a training orientations. Let the students to judge which they can build in right after introducing the details of this different focus, right? Why these different, classes are offered, which goes which, which would be most appropriate for you, right? You yourself judge first, and then I give you, say examination to test your, say proficiency level, right? something like that. Right? This is exactly what the author mentioned, that we should have collective efforts there, collaborative efforts, not only just from the exam test. The students are not so happy with exam test because it can be really bad, did really bad right after, say traveling a long distance, right? But some other maybe interview, right? How those proficiency levels can be got. Make sense? Okay. How about the differences? So what do you think about the difference between international students and immigrant or resident students?
Sorry, repeat that one more time.
What's the differences between the mainstream, so international students, or we call it visa students, as well as the residents or the immigrant students? The immigrant students. So,
as far as being placed?
The differences, in general. Are you familiar with these two populations?
The overseas students.
Yeah, overseas students are international students.
Yeah,
right?
International students.
Okay. What are the features of their writing, for example?
They placed better.
Oh, really? Yeah, good. That's right. Why?
Because their background usually.
That's right.
Yeah, because a lot of the international students came from oftentimes good schools.
Good.
And that kind of thing.
I
Whereas
want to
those
comment.
guarantees were certainly not there.
Exactly. And they are actually highly, say, advanced in their literacy, the first language, right? Even in the second language literacy, the level is high, right? Very good.
I can get the difference between international students and resident students. What does it mean here?
Because for the resident students, usually we have, if we learn the, Dr. Ferris and Hitchcock's book, and then there is a tons of different, say, student bodies, writing composition class. And so for those resident students, usually they came to the United States here, our country for like several years, or even like 10 years, at least 5 years, and then they have already been exposed to language, say easily, because this is a English-speaking country, right? And then they actually, this is what we call, they are the ear learners, rather than eye learners, right? The ear learners, they just pick up that language so easily, just in the daily conversation, right?
But still English is their second language. Yes?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I agree, and their English proficiency levels can be not as good as international students, right? Right? But not necessarily. Some immigrant students are just, resident students are just because of their parents, right? The parents, came here just for a career, for example, better, say, goals in academia, whatever, or, right? And then their kids can be really, behave well, right? And have a very high proficiency level. But for those, for example, because of the politics or religious reasons, right? I think those resident students can be a little bit weak in second language writing. Do you think so? English writing. Okay, so I think we definitely want to know for sure and be careful when you have those students in your class, right? So those are international students. I like this here. Actually, we covered this already. They actually, although their language proficiency level can be good, but they can struggle academically or culturally, right? They still can struggle academically because they never wrote, for example, research paper before. They never wrote the annotated bibliography. They never, heard of that before, right? So some specific genres still are so strange to them or unfamiliar to them, right? But of course, they have cultural shock, whatever, right? These are actually the struggling culturally. They usually are taught, informed by writing to learn rather than learning to write. So that is to say, they usually are called eye learners. They spelling mistake. They actually learned a lot by memorizing rules, doing a lot of drills, and by readings, right? Once again, they are eye learners, okay? But for the resident immigrants, they feel like there are two types, it varies. If those are students who kind of like came here due to the political or religious persecution, then you can see they may not necessarily have strong first language literacy. So of course, the second language literacy is not good enough. right? Okay, so again, they do not get really formal training in the classrooms. They just pick up their language in this country, for example, right? That's interesting. I just really had such experience meeting with and discussing with those students who actually are immigrants. Yeah, so I just feel like, oh wow, really? Their writing is really not good, because I still remember when I taught at Marshall University, one student actually went to the writing center to help his classmate help her with the academic writing paper, and I think that the classmate is actually the resident student. And then when she come back, she told me, I didn't benefit at all. I feel like his writing is not as good as mine, you know? So you can tell that even though these students have already been here for a long time, their writing, proficiency, are really not so good, especially like in terms of organization, or even like say, for example, like the discourse level, right? Especially discourse level, or even like the sentence level, But they know a lot of vocabularies, right? They are so eloquent, of course, during, the conversation, right? This is exactly what you want to learn further. So you can address the needs of the population of second language writers by different ways. This is what I want you to do. In the future, you will become those specific experts, right? You can provide workshops and training to prepare your TAs, right? You can, of course, because you have already had the training in second language writing study, and then you can, contribute to the field. And I mean, as instructor, as well as scholar, as well as the trainer, right? I don't think that we have enough time to cover all this. And I mean, in terms of the purpose, the participants, the research, but everything looks very similar, and it's easy, right? It is, very easy to, understand. The last thing I really want to draw your attention is the survey. Okay, survey is to show that you know a certain, say, quantitative research well, right? So you want to collect the data by using a quantitative research method. You do the questionnaire, for example. Like this study, he did the survey, but if you take a look at it, the survey focused on the open-ended questions, right? But I would introduce this to you. If you want to do a survey, usually you rely on the questionnaire as well. So this is a big name there. If we do the questionnaire, you must check Dr. Donnie's work on this person. Donnie's work on questionnaire in second language research. Yeah, it's so important. You want to make sure the instrument is good enough. You want to test the validity and reliability of your instrument, right? If you want to do a Likert scale questionnaire, right? How do you know you construct those question items well, right? So it's important for you to test it out, right? So how many of you learned questionnaires before? So know for sure. Like there are Likert scale questionnaire. Okay, good. There are, for example, the semantic differential scale. For example, what do you think of this course? You can say, oh, it's real exciting or informative. But the versus one could be, okay, dull, say not informative at all, whatever, right? So these are specific. You can choose these different numbers there, right? Or a rating. Is that clear? Okay. I think you will definitely want to check these resources right after class. Okay, I would definitely want you to think about this as well. We have already critiqued this article, right, a little bit. So I think we are good to go. Okay, so next time we will be meeting again here, and we will discuss the, say, text perspectives, right? So not only the learners, the teachers, and we'll talk about the texts. Okay, thank you for your attention.